All right, I think we're going to just start. All right, well, hi everyone. Thank you so much to those who have attended. My name is Fernanda Martinez. I'm the Director of Productivity and Wellbeing at Sonas. It's a company that helps people and organizations measure and enhance their learning, productivity, and well-being through technology and behavioral science. It's with great pleasure that I invite Chris Cummings to speak with us today. Chris is the CEO of Sonas Group, the organizers of the global series Wellbeing at Work Summits, the co-founder of the InsideOut Awards, and an advisor to organizations around the world. Hi, Chris. Welcome, and thanks so much for taking the time.
Oh, it's great to be here, Fernanda. Thank you for the invitation.
No, you're very, very welcome. So for those who don't know, Chris is based in London. I'm here in Lisbon, and today we're just going to talk about a couple of things, starting with the role of leaders to drive a better workplace, the importance, cost, and importance of an engaged workforce through increased productivity and well-being, challenges organizations have in this transformation, and the part that I'm really looking forward to is Chris's journey, into this world of well-being, and just to know a little bit more about, what drove you to make the changes in your life, to get to where you are. So perhaps we can, let's just start with that first point, the role of leaders to drive a better workplace. What do you, given your experience and, what you have seen, what do you believe those, what is that role?
Yeah, I think certainly over the last 12 months, we've seen the importance of an engaged workforce and increased well-being conversations and actions within organisations. Thankfully, that's now really starting to take shape. I think it's clear, and the data that's coming out from a number of reports around the world now, an engaged, motivated, healthy, and purpose-driven workforce will deliver a much higher level of productivity, loyalty. It will help the talent retention and attraction, and also it's the right thing to do. So many organisations have on their website our people are our most important asset, and I think now is the time to really live and breathe that. Not just have sound bites on your website. Let's really mean that. We don't want to make our workforce sick. We want them to be highly engaged and healthy. And I think, it's going to take time, but I personally think we need to take this to a whole new level now. The awareness over the last 12 months around well-being has really advanced. But I really think, things like billable hours just don't align to a healthy and productive workforce. We know that if you do a certain number of hours per day, after that, your productivity levels really start to slip. And if you're in such organizations or industry sectors like legal or professional services, when you are being billed by the hour, those standards might slip. And I think it's really important that we really change the way we look at what a successful organization is. Is it through monitoring just the financials, or do we bring in well-being and the health of employees into that strategic conversation? I think that's where we need to head, and I think leaders have a big role to play in that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, particularly, the more traditional and conventional workday, be it your 8-hour workday, and particularly people in those fields of legal and financial, where it's not an 8-hour workday, and it's far more, and they are being billed by the hour. But the fact remains is, we have our peaks and troughs, and is it something that's being identified, by the leaders of these organizations that, are you better off actually just, staggering, the days, hours, across your employees, so that you are actually achieving that the optimum levels of productivity and engagement? Because I think in terms of engagement, it's you have people who are actively disengaged, who are very, very quick to, to speak of their grievances and their disappointments. It's I think, in my opinion, the group of people that are most concerning and where focus should be placed on are the silent, disengaged people, because they kind of just sit there and, they might do the work because it makes part of their work ethic, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're being productive. So, certainly something for future leaders to consider.
And I think the whole future of work piece has been flipped on its head over the last 12 months. So, as an organisation, we have always worked and focused on outcomes, and everyone works remotely around the world, and we come together. We've been using Zoom for some time pre-pandemic, because everyone works in different ways. I'm more of a morning person. And I'm glad to see this webinar is in the morning, because I'm far more alert and much more productive during those times. I'm less productive later on in the day and into the evening. I tend not to work in the evening, and that really works for me. But I know there's members of my team who work in different ways, and certainly over the last 12 months, if they've had homeschooling, if they've had a number of different things going on in their lives, which we've all been touched by during COVID, they need to work flexibly around those other things in their life. And again, just focusing on those outcomes, looking at how the future of work will be shaped, I think is really important for leaders to now really focus in on, because there's that return to the office piece, which is coming around the world, but some people will not want to return full-time to the office, and some will want a bit more flexibility, others will work in different hours, so I really think that one size fits all, that 9 to 5 moment has gone, and I've noticed a number of tech firms recently come out and really focus in on outcomes, and I think that's where we need to be as organisations that are fit for the future.
I was just thinking there is going to, going back to the office, it's also interesting to see the number of people who are emphatic that they don't want to return to the office. So that's also quite a challenge for organizations to have to create these hybrid workforces, and obviously the needs are different. So it's interesting to see how each organization is really trying to immerse themselves into the scenario. It's not really something that you can just go and buy a book and read on and think, okay, I've got the solutions. You've actually really got to live it and walk it yourself in order to find the best solution for your team and for your organization. And obviously,
I think flexibility is key. And you mentioned about a large proportion of people maybe not wanting to go back to the office. I know a lot of people here in the UK under 30 who might be in shared accommodation, who have been working from their bedroom, who are really keen to get back. They might have onboarded into a new role without even meeting their team. So I really think that flexibility piece with a structure, I see Maria's structure still needed. I think that's important, but allowing and putting your trust in your teams to really create that hybrid working model that works for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you agree? Yeah, Maria, does that answer the question sufficiently? Well, anyway, moving forward then. So apart, and we know we've spoken, there's a lot of conversation around the opportunity cost and importance of an engaged workforce, through the increased levels of productivity and well-being. And I know that a lot of companies and organizations, yes, it all sounds very nice, but do you believe that organizations have really come to the party in the sense that they really do believe that now, that there is that cost, there is that importance of that engaged workforce? It's not really something that's ever going to go away now. It has to be a focus that has to be sustained throughout the future of the workplace.
Yeah, I mean, I was chatting to someone from Stanford University in the last couple of weeks, and his role is to talk to leaders around the world to work on a flourishing project, I guess, for Stanford University. And obviously, there's a lot of clever people within the university, and they've done a lot of work on this. His words are far better than mine. He said, if you do not focus on well-being of your employees, in 5 years you'll be dead as an organization. And that's, I think, you know, I tend to agree. I think there's a lot of work to do, and I think we're all on that journey. And it's quite a challenge to find the right fit for your organization. One size doesn't fit all, and you know that you've got to constantly evolve and work on these programs. But I do think you will see over the coming months and years that those who don't focus on employee well-being will see a talent drain. I do see productivity levels being challenged, and I do think that if you don't have some sort of focus on employee well-being more strategically, then I think you will struggle as an organisation. Personally, I think workers, employees are looking for this. Many people I speak to who say when they're interviewing people now, it's not all about the salary that's being offered, it's about what else is being offered from the organisation. Is there that flexibility to work remotely? Are there the benefits and rewards within that organisational structure? And do you look after your people? Are there things in place to ensure we're not working our employees to the ground where they simply get sick? And you know, do we really want to work in a world where that is the norm? I really don't think so. So from my perspective, and from many people I speak to around the world, I think if you're not focusing on it now, you will really start to see the effects of that decision pretty soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in 5 years sounds like a long way away, but it really, really isn't. I mean, if we just consider it's been it's been a year and a half since just COVID, you know, since our worlds and our lives have been affected by that. I mean, I just think a year and a half, it just flew by. So 5 years in this, you know, in this area, it will go by very, very quickly. And I think as we say, and as you keep, you know, you emphasize, it isn't a one size fits all. It needs to be something, a solution that is relevant and pertinent to your organization, and it's to find what's actually going to work for your organization. So I think, in my perspective, it's all about being intentional. If it's something that you are wanting to include in your strategy, it can't just be something so that people think, oh, well, it's a box ticked. It really just needs to be your belief. It has to make part of your values and your strategy, your core values, more importantly. Because I've spoken to a number of people that say, yes, there are certain things in place, you know, but it's very much just to tick that box of well-being being covered. But it's not really, because it's still sort of, well, when there are issues that need to be addressed, it is very politely sort of brushed aside, because it's, you know, it's just not as important as other aspects of the organization. Well,
yeah, I mean, culture is really important, and setting the culture is down to leadership. But also, I think asking what, you know, communicating and asking what your employees are looking for, taking the time to actually listen as well. There's been a huge number of pulse surveys and employee surveys throughout the last 12-18 months during COVID, asking what employees need, what are the challenges, where can we assist you? But then again, some poor examples of, you're doing all of this research with your employees, but actually you're not taking any action from what you're hearing back. So I think it's really important to, first of all, communicate and ask, but also act on what's coming through. And there will be trends, there will be data trends that you can look at. You're not going to please everyone, but I think having that structure again, and place where employees know that there's a structure in place, they can pick and choose what works for them in terms of the initiative. But culturally, you need to find that that open culture where people can put their hand up and speak openly, and create that culture where it's a continually evolving wellbeing program.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose as well, when you are, it's, as you say, it's polls and surveys that, have been asked, and it is obviously crucial that, that the feedback is taken into consideration in order to be able to develop and to provide those solutions for your organization. But I think it's also a question of sustainability, because if this has got to be something that is going to be the future of, not just only the workplace, but people's future generally around well-being, I find that the challenge is also creating solutions that are sustainable. It's like anything, the enthusiasm is there in the beginning and it's everybody, yes, let's do it. But, then life happens and, you have your responsibilities and expectations, etc., and so forth. And then you kind of think, oh, I'll get back to that. And then eventually that also falls by the wayside. So, for me, and it's something that Bassoon do incredibly well, understanding that it can't just be this instant, that's it, it's instant, the change is going to happen overnight. This is not a race, it is a marathon. It has to happen, taking small steps, one step at a time, and making it, creating it and creating a habit out of it, that your well-being through certain actions actually becomes habit forming, so that it does actually create that level of sustainability, and where, for me, it would make perfect sense. Ideally, to have organizations who really do have their hand on the pulse of their organization and understand exactly where those shortfalls are, and are able to sort of direct their employees in the directions that, that they need to be, and offer employees also that sense of accountability that, yes, sure, your organization can provide X, but eventually you also need to want it for yourself. So yeah. It's, that therein lies the rub a little bit as well. People do need to be intentional. It can't just all be about the workplace and your organization. You need to want to make it a priority for yourself as well.
Yeah, and that comes down to culture, I think. As I said earlier, I'm more productive in the morning, but I might want to go to the gym at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And as an organisation, if you are that traditional sort of 9 to 5, why are you not at your desk and why are you not responding to my emails at 3 o'clock? Well, that time works for me in terms of when I feel at my optimum level to go to the gym. So that's when I'm going to go, between 3 and 4. But that doesn't mean that my work suffers. It just means that again, you might want to pick the kids up from school during that time or whatever it might be. And, having that flexibility and trust within the organisation, creating an open culture, creating a culture that allows you to do things like that, but also focused on the outcomes, I think is where we need to be. And that trust level has really been challenged. I've worked for organizations in the past where if you're not at your desk at a certain time and you can't leave your desk until a certain time, we've now all worked from home over the last 12, 18 months, and productivity hasn't suffered a huge amount. So it's clearly we've got into the routine now of trusting our people, which is great. That's a great step forward. Now we need to take that to the next level.
Absolutely. And also, talking about that, I'm very much like you, Chris. it might sound ridiculous and horrific to some, but I'm up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. and my brain is very much switched on. And if I could do, that's when my day begins. And it's not to say that I don't do any work, after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but it certainly doesn't involve too much head down focus, because that's just my peak is in the morning. But also looking at the different generations now in the workforce, I do feel that has benefited, but has also created a little bit of it just makes it it's a little bit more complex, because you do have still, those legacy leaders that are of a certain generation, and they have a certain mindset. So, if you're not at your desk, all day, then, what are you doing? So there is that sort of butting heads of trying to sort of understand that, the world has changed at an incredible rate. As you mentioned earlier, flexibility is key, and to just afford people that level of trust. I think, to remind yourself as the head of an organization that you've employed these people for what they can do. It doesn't matter how long they can do it in. It's the fact that they do it and that they deliver. So it's interesting to hear different generations talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, whether you're a traditional leader or a more modern leader, outcomes are the key.
Exactly.
Everyone wants a positive outcome, whether you're traditional or modern. So those positive outcomes come from when people are really engaged, productive, and working at their optimum level. And if your optimum level is 4:30 in the morning, then go ahead and be my guest. I'm not quite that much of an early starter, but it's that understanding of how people work, and everyone's different. And of course, there's there's that collaborative piece. And I think as we come back to the office, maybe a couple of times a week, it's bringing people together and having that collaborative piece, and that needs to happen at a certain time. It can't all be 4:30 because people are not going to.
Why? It's such a beautiful time of day.
Yeah, it is. So it's really, it's really finding that flexibility, but focusing on outcomes.
And I do believe that it is important to do that, finding those times where everybody can come back together, because it just helps, create that sense of inclusion, particularly within hybrid workforces. I had a very interesting conversation, a couple of weeks ago, and there's nothing wrong in having a hybrid workforce, but then you can't, you'll get people that are working remotely. They are going to feel excluded from activities, that are taking place in the office. So that everybody coming together, be it, okay, if not once a week, at least twice a month, where, it's not just all work, but it's actually just that reconnection and really just touching base with everybody, I think would be crucial in creating that environment where everybody is sort of on the same page and has the same values. And it's all about that diversity and inclusion that, as we know, is just so important. These are things that can't be overlooked. So moving on, because we could honestly go on for on that. So there are a lot of challenges that organizations are having to face, during this transformation period. To name a few, for you, what have been the most obvious? And I mean, and going sort of from the top to the bottom. I mean, for me personally, I see the resilience levels have really been depleted. People are just exhausted, and we know that. But, what would you say as an organization, what are the biggest challenges, to actually keep this very much alive and still healthy and still productive, bearing in mind that there are different expectations to manage?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, I can talk from our perspective and from my own perspective. Traditionally, back in March 2020, we were primarily a live events business. And so, our world changed fairly significantly overnight. And it was definitely the most challenging time of my career. It was exhausting, and it was challenging for the whole team. We were, really pushed to the limit in terms of, what do we do? But the constant barrage of changes that were continually happening. I think as a leader, I tried to step back and really analyze, what is it that we actually do, and how can we do this in this new environment that we've been placed in. And I think coming out of it now, looking at sort of 12, 15 months after it, I think actually for us, it just accelerated the direction of travel that we were on anyway as an organisation. So we did a lot of changes in terms of how our business model worked. We completely, flipped the whole model, but we remained close to our market and really continued the conversation with all of our stakeholders, whether it be our clients, our teams. We continued to listen and continued to take a temperature, and that has really stood us in good stead as we come out of it, because we're really delivering for what our market wants. In terms of what you can do as a person in that situation, I think, it's been mentioned a few times, make sure you put your own oxygen mask on first, making sure that you remain as healthy as possible. There were times where, there was some pretty long days, and it was exhausting, and you have to be upbeat and positive, which is challenging. It's exhausting when you're going through that, especially as a small business. But yeah, making sure I tried to remain focused on what we needed to do, and remain positive, and look after yourself. Continue to eat healthy, continue to get the sleep that you need. Continue to exercise if you can, although that was limiting, and making sure that your team look after themselves as well, because you do have to remain really, really focused. With a small business, at any time, you have to remain very focused, but I think it's laser sharp focus when you've got a situation as we had. So yeah, lots of learnings, but I do think as we come out of this, I think it's been that there are elements that have been really positive for us as a business, because it has accelerated some of the things that we were looking to do anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, all I can say is congratulations, because I mean, I've had the pleasure of meeting you in person, and I mean, obviously we were in discussion of with the Wellbeing at Work Summit, and possibly having it here in Portugal, and then everything just happened, and yeah, it was just unbelievable to watch how quickly you did kind of just transform your business model, and it's, well, for me, I mean, my perspective, it looks as if it's stronger than what it's ever been, and I would imagine that with it being, with you using the platforms that you use now, it's just so many more people are able to participate and to contribute to this world. So yeah, it's been fantastic to watch, and I've had the pleasure of attending a few of the summits, and it's, for me, if I'm very, very honest, I'm more engaged with the recent summits than what I would have been if it had been something in person, because it just helped sort of streamline the direction of thought and what it is that I particularly wanted to discuss. And I mean, we'll get to that shortly, what the whole summit is about. But in terms of you finding the solution, I just wanted to ask, was it, obviously you as a leader, you had to step back and just have a look at the new landscape really before making decisions. Was this something that you obviously openly discussed with your team? Did they contribute when it came to providing solutions? What was that process like?
Yeah, it was a constant communication with the team, and ultimately you have to make the decision as the leader, but you're constantly talking to your team. I think the most important thing that you can do in that situation is say, look, I don't have all of the answers, and this is a completely new thing for me. Showing empathy, understanding everyone in the team will have their own challenges, whether it be, a member of the family contracting COVID or being really sick, whether it be homeschooling, the mental health of our people is really important. So everyone has been touched in various different ways. So really showing understanding during that period, and continuing to keep them informed, and constant communication. I don't think you can communicate enough in those situations. So I always made sure I touched base with everyone at least once a week, and whether that be through Zoom or calling. So it was a constant keeping them updated on what we're doing, but also holding your hands up and saying, I don't have all of the answers, because it's one of those scenarios, and I think that approach doesn't change in any scenario. I don't think I'm the person who has all of the answers. That's why we have a fantastic team around and involved. So we try to be as collaborative as we can, but ultimately when it's that people are looking for a sense of direction as well, and that's important.
So just before we've got obviously the last section, or the last bit of this conversation, we're going to open it up to people who are in attendance and watching and listening. I'd like to, if you wouldn't mind, would you share with us kind of a little bit more about your journey? What kind of forced you or drove you to come into this whole world? I mean, you're making some pretty big leaps and changing. I mean, I speak for myself. You've been instrumental in my progress and in my beginnings within the wellbeing area. How did this begin for you?
Well, I've worked in events for about 25 years, and about eight or 9 years ago, my partner, who has anxiety, had a pretty bad experience at work, and it motivated me, really. I think it was, back then it was still very early conversation around well-being, mental health in the workplace. There was a lot of celebrities, a lot of famous people talking openly about their own mental health, but there was a stigma attached to the workplace. And I just knew that my partner is very productive, amazing worker, and uniquely creative, and a huge asset to any organisation, and I think that's the case across the board. So for me, it was about bringing a positive slant to that. So I decided to quit the corporate role and start up on my own to bring a forum of leaders together to really try and change the conversation around well-being and mental health in the workplace. And that still drives us today. There's still work to do in many areas of the world. Thankfully, that conversation has advanced in recent years. Certainly the last 12 months has really brought it to the fore for every organisation in every part of the world. But it still motivates me personally and the rest of the team to continue to bang the drum about the positive sides to wellbeing and mental health within the workplace, whether that be individuals or why organisations should be taking this seriously. So that's my journey, and that continues to be my motivation, really.
Yeah, and it's wonderful to see how your journey continues and the number of people that you've touched. And I mean, I'd like to talk a little bit now about the European Wellbeing at Work Summit taking place now in May. Firstly, Bison, we have the pleasure of being the company to represent Portugal in this particular summit, and I'm really, really happy about that. But it would be lovely for you to just explain to people, what is it about, what can they expect, just so that people have a better idea.
Yeah, I think, obviously our summits have evolved since they started 7 or 8 years ago. It's not really about awareness now. It's really about bringing some fantastic minds together to share best practice and to really help. I think a lot of HR leaders find this journey quite complicated. We know about the awareness building, we know about all of the things that we should do, but it's trying to provide the HR community some strategic direction to help them really deliver holistic, successful wellbeing programs within their organisations. So we'll try and inspire our audience across 3 days with obviously yourself and Dr. Ricardo from Portugal, bringing that view from the government side. We've got various organisations across Europe sharing their story. We bring international speakers in. So I mentioned Stanford University. We've got Anil Chima from Stanford University dialing in and sharing some thoughts around what they're doing within their flourishing project, and really bringing all of those like-minded people together to share some great practices on how you can deliver strategically within your organizations.
Yeah, and it's wonderful to see how it has evolved, and how there are policymakers and leaders that are actively now wanting to just be involved and speak their piece. It's actually very refreshing, and kind of, it does give hope that there is light, not at the end of the tunnel, through the tunnel at the end, that there is that possibility of things actually improving, and being something sustainable. So with the summit taking place now, I understand that this is not being separated into different countries. It's the whole of Europe. It's taking place over 3 days. Could you tell us a little bit more about the structure, the first day, second day, third day, and?
Yeah, so it's completely virtual, and obviously, if we were to have an agenda that was 3 full days in front of a screen, I think everyone would be screaming at me. So what we've done is with the format, we've broken it down into a couple of hour chunks, so you can join and pop in as and when the sessions that you want to attend, but actually overall there's not a huge amount of screen time. It's about dropping in to those sessions that you want to. We try and represent as much of Europe as possible, so we have a focus on Portugal with your session. We also have a focus on Germany, on the Netherlands, on Switzerland, and bringing people from across Europe to share their best practices. So again, the beauty of a virtual event. It used to be taking place in one city in Europe, and lots of travel, lots of carbon emissions. Now everyone can just log in and get to meet people that and hear from people you probably wouldn't hear from, as I say, speakers from across the world, including leaders from Europe as well. So yeah, it's a nice relaxed popping in, popping out sort of setup, and everyone who's registered also gets access to the recordings afterwards that you can watch on demand.
Wonderful. So we have a few, well, we've got some time, and thanks again. This has just been an amazing conversation so far, but I want to sort of open it up now to any of the attendees who may have some questions around what we've been discussing, the summit. It would be great to hear from you. If not, we'll just carry on until someone says something. But for me, yeah, I'm really excited about the summit. For those who might have only just popped in now, so we're now talking about the European Wellbeing at Work Summit that's hosted by Sonas Group, which is, Chris is the CEO of this group. But for me, it's just been amazing to see how it's, as I was saying earlier, it's just such a wonderful platform to speak to people from everywhere and to hear the different insights from different parts of the world, because as we keep saying, there is no one size fits all. And it is actually important to consider things that you may not necessarily apply to your own organization, that may work somewhere else. And I think that's what I really enjoy about it. There is this sense of inclusion and safety as well. People feel very free to talk about their solutions, their plans, etc.
Yeah, I mean, just on that, I've worked in a number of markets, running events in various locations around the world and in various markets, and I think that the wellbeing community that we have is the most open and collaborative community I've ever worked in, and I think that's the right approach. We all need to collaborate. We all need to work together to create happy, healthy, engaged workplaces. I think that's really important, and I think that sense of purpose as well is really important. I think you're going to see a lot more discussion around purpose and what is the purpose of organizations, what is an individual's purpose. I think that's going to be a real drive now, certainly on the talent attraction and retention piece, but also as an overall well-being piece as well. I think that sense of purpose is really important. I know my productivity levels have really risen since I've found my sense of purpose, and I think that's what certainly the younger workers are looking for now, to feel as though they are making a difference within the world, within their community, within society. So I think that's another area that we'll touch on quite a bit at the summit, but also for those in the audience who are trying to figure out the next stage of their wellbeing program, I think purpose should certainly be part of that.
And then we're just talking about purpose and also talent attraction. Just based on people that I speak to, there is enormous focus at the moment now on leadership, changing the way leadership is taking place. That it's all very good to have these things in place, but are the leaders of organizations doing it themselves? Because here, definitely, and I think I don't just speak for here, I'm pretty sure it's like this everywhere, that from the top down sort of, leading by example is important. So do you think, I would imagine this summit is also great for leaders to kind of sit and listen to other points of view and to maybe sort of, fine tune their strategies, to sort of fit their organization better.
I think fine tuning their behaviors as well. I think what's happened over the last 12 months in a number of leaders, and many have spoken to me off the record about this, is, am I fit for purpose as a leader? Do I have the emotional intelligence? Do my C-suite have the emotional intelligence that's required to take this forward? And many are now going in, having training, learning about how to be better leaders and be more emotionally intelligent as a management team and as a leadership team. So I think that there's certainly been a shift. I think you've seen some great examples of leadership over the last 12, 18 months. Some fantastic communications from some really authentic leaders, and others who have probably taken a look in the mirror and said, well, you know, I need to evolve, because, you know, the world has changed. The world of work, the future of work has changed, and we're there now, and the skill set that is required from leaders now is very different.
I remember, I mean, it's slightly off topic, but not. I remember it was about three years after leaving university. I was working for an NGO, and you know, some amazing people, and the conversation around the lack of emotional intelligence and empathy. And I mean, these are conversations that have been taking place for a long time. And I remember the managing director at the time, honestly, almost scoffing at the idea, like, oh, come on, you know, like, this is all so warm and fuzzy, like this has nothing to do with work and productivity and solving problems. And I often think about leaders who really did believe that and are now faced with the reality that, oh my gosh, you know, we have maybe missed the mark. We should have been concentrating or you know, putting specific focus on that. And I think it's just something for people to understand. This is something that can be learned and developed. It's not something, you know, for people who aren't by nature, you know, very empathetic, or, you know, emotional intelligence may be something a little bit of a stretch for them to be accepting of now, that it is something that you can develop. This is not something that you have to have immediately right now and know it all. As you were saying earlier, you put your hand up and acknowledge that you don't have all the answers, and there are areas that need some attention, and that there are solutions, you know, for whatever problem you are facing. You know, that nobody's going to judge you for saying, I don't have all the answers and I need to work on myself before I can be an effective leader.
Yeah, and I think the skill set of the future of leadership is shifting now, and you know, that comes back to that original point of, if you don't focus on this, you'll be dead in 5 years. I think that's, you know, things are going to move so quickly from here, and you know, those who ignore this will really start to see the effects, not within 5 years, but I think within 12 months. I think there'll be so many changes so quickly around the workplace, and the skill set and the values and the approach that leaders take has to shift generally, and I think it is. You know, I'm seeing some great examples, as I say, of leaders really challenging themselves around the skill set and looking at what changes they can make.
Yep. Well, I think, I mean, this has been an amazing conversation and I've loved speaking to you. I'm going to, you know, obviously there will be a recording of this conversation that we, you know, we will post onto our LinkedIn pages a little later and other platforms. But thank you so much, Chris. It's been amazing chatting to you, and I can't wait for you to come to Portugal again so we can meet face to face. And looking forward to the summit taking place in 2 weeks' time. And yeah, it's inspirational, you know, the work that you do. And yeah, just for me, I love being a part of it. And yeah, it's really just been a pleasure.
Thanks for the invitation. It's been great chatting, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
Likewise. All right then. Bye.
Bye.